أشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب العباد.
So the Sheikh says that these are the Salaf, and then he says all those who follow the Salaf and traverse their path in every age are designated as being Salafi due to their ascription to the Salaf. So if a person says I follow the Salaf, that person would be designated as being Salafi. And this term, the word Salaf, is used by many scholars. It is used to describe Ad-Daraqutni rahimahullah, Ibn Salah, the Muhaddith from the 7th century. He is also termed as being Salafi in his Aqidah. Why? And the reason for that is that they followed the Salaf al-Salih in their Aqidah, in their beliefs, even though he might have followed the madhab of Imam Shafi rahimahullah. The example I'm giving is Ibn Salah. Even though he followed that madhab in fiqh, even though that was the case, in his Aqidah, he was very, very strict on the way of the Salaf. So that's an important issue. So the first thing that we need to know is that the Salaf are those 3 generations, and the second thing is that we need to know that they were the best in absolutely everything because of the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Shaykh then needs to explain some other terms, and he says, أهل السنة والجماعة هم من كان على مثل ما كان عليه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وأصحابه. أهل السنة والجماعة, they are all those who are upon that which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions were upon. Now, why is it important to be upon that which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions were upon? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says in the hadith that the Jews split up into 71 sects and the Christians into 72, and this ummah will split up into 73 sects. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam at the end of the hadith, he then says that the people who will not be in the fire of Jahannam, the people that will not go astray, ما أنا عليه اليوم وأصحابي, what I'm upon today and my companions. So, if we want to know how do we make sure that we do not split up into sects, how do we make sure that we are not going astray, we need to make sure that we are upon what the Prophet ﷺ was upon and his companions. So all of the issues and all the matters of deen upon which the Prophet ﷺ was upon, those matters which he taught, those matters that his Sahaba practiced after him, that is what we need to practice, inshallah, to make sure that we are guided and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects us from Jahannam. وَسُمُّوا أَهْلُ السُنَّةِ لِاسْتِمْسَاكِهِمْ وَاتِّبَاعِهِمْ لِسُنَّةِ النَّبِيِّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. They are called Ahlul Sunnah. Why Ahlul Sunnah? Why the people of the Sunnah? They are called Ahlul Sunnah because of adherence to the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, we need to ask ourselves, brothers and sisters, are we upon the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Can we call ourselves Ahlul Sunnah? And just one example that I want to give, inshallah, is that do we find ourselves praying in the masjid 5 times a day? There are many examples to give, but for the men of this ummah, when we say that we are on the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but we are not praying in the masjid as much as we can and when we can, some people live very far from a masjid. Some people, there might not even be a masjid where they stay, so they are excused. But for those of us that have access to masajid, it is important that we follow that particular sunnah. So the reason why I mention this example is that we need to ask ourselves how much of the sunnah is in our lives. Can the term Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah be used for us? So the study of Aqidah and the study of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah and what is, who were the Salaf and all of these matters are not studied so that mashallah we can now differentiate between ourselves and other Muslims. No. These are questions that we need to ask. These are questions that we need to ask ourselves. And that is why we study, to improve ourselves, to become better Muslims. We don't study so that we could argue with people and that we could say, mashallah, look at us, we are on the sunnah. No, that is not the reason. The reason is that we can practice the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ so that we can save ourselves and our families and the Muslims. So it is important to ask ourselves, are we adhering to the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And everyone needs to ask themselves that particular question. وسموا الجماعة لأنه الذين اجتمعوا على الحق ولم يتفرقوا في الدين واجتمعوا على أئمة الحق ولم يخرجوا عليهم واتبعوا ما أجمع عليه سلف الأمة. They are called the Jama'ah. Why are they called the Jama'ah? Because they are the ones who gather upon the truth and do not split up in their religion. They gather upon the legitimate rulers and do not rebel against them. And they follow the consensus, the ijma' of the pious predecessors of this ummah. So the Jama'ah literally does not mean a group. They are not the people of the Sunnah and the group. No, they are a community. A community that have gathered upon the truth. They do not split up in their religion. Why do they not split up in their religion? Because what they follow the Quran and the Sunnah, and they adhere to it to the best of their ability. So we find that if you follow the Quran and the Sunnah sincerely, with knowledge and striving to implement it, then definitely there will be unity. Definitely there will be no splits, insha'Allah ta'ala. But we'll speak about that a little bit later. They gather upon the legitimate rulers, right? And again, that's an issue we will talk about. And they do not rebel against them. The Shaykh, there's a special chapter towards the end of the book, the second last chapter, in which he deals with the Muslims and their community and the issues of leadership and rebellion and all of those kinds of issues. So inshallah we will leave the discussion to them. He says they follow the consensus, the ijma' of the pious predecessors of this ummah. So whatever the Salafus Salih have agreed upon, this is what they follow. So the Shaykh, in a way, he's telling us that if they agree upon, if they will always agree if this is going to be their methodology, if they are going to follow the Quran and the Sunnah, and they are going to follow the ijma' of the Salaf, and they are going to stick to the legitimate rulers, then all of that is going to make sure that there is unity and that there are no splits in the religion. He continues and he says, لما كانوا من المتبعين لسنة رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم المقتفين للأثر وسموا أهل الحديث وأهل الأثر وأهل الاتباع ويسمون الطائفة المنصورة والفرقة الناجية. Since they are the ones who truly follow the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم, following his path, they are also called the traditionalists, Ahlul Hadith. Now the term Ahlul Hadith is a term that it has been used for centuries. It is a term that referred to people like Ali ibn al-Madini, Imam Bukhari, Tirmidhi, Abu Dawud, Imam Ahmad. They were all considered to be Ahlul Hadith. And the reason why they were called Ahlul Hadith is because they followed the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Not only did they study it, teach it, but they implemented it and they made it part of their lives, and they were known as Ahlul Hadith. Now the word Hadith can, just to define it quickly, inshallah, technically what does it mean? It means everything attributed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whether that be sayings, actions, tacit approval. And according to Ahlul Hadith, it also includes the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's character, his physical appearance, and it also, some ulama, the muhaddithin, they include the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life after prophethood. And some muhaddithin even include what happened in the 40 years before the Prophet ﷺ became a prophet. So that is a definition of hadith. They are also called the people of narration, Ahlul Athar. And the word Athar, it also has a connotation of that which has been narrated. But here Athar means following in the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ and the adherents, Ahlul Ittiba'. Why? Because they follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and they adhere to it and they hold onto it with they bite onto it with their molar teeth. They are also called the aided group and the saved sect. And the saved sect because of the hadith I mentioned before about the ummah splitting up. And the Prophet كلهم في النار كلها في النار إلا واحدة. All of them will be in the hellfire except one. So the Prophet ﷺ says that the one saved from the hellfire would be the one who follows the Prophet ﷺ and his companions. So therefore they were called the saved sect. The aided group, why they called the aided group? Because of the hadith narrated in Bukhari and Muslim, when the Prophet ﷺ says, لا تزال طائفة من أمتي ظاهرين على الحق, that there will always be a group of my ummah that will be upon the haqq. They will not be harmed by anyone, and even by those who seek to betray them. So the Prophet ﷺ says ظاهرين, and the word ظاهرين here means aided, meaning aided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, he says what the hadith means is that Allah subhanahu, it means the people of hadith, Ahlul Hadith. He says if it is not Ahlul Hadith, then I don't know who they are. So these are all the names that are given to the people who follow the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whether that be in matters of Aqidah or in matters of action, meaning fiqh. And these are the names that they were given: Ahlul Hadith, Ahlul Athar, Ahlul Ittiba', Al-Ta'ifatu Al-Mansura, Wal-Firqatu Najiyah. So if you read in different books, you read this is the Aqidah of Ahlul Hadith, this is the Aqidah of the Salaf, this is the Aqidah of Ahlul Athar, and this is the Aqidah of the Firqatul Najiyah. They're all speaking about exactly the same thing. Now, that was an introduction, a short introduction, and the Shaykh then moves on to the first chapter, and one, I think, in this entire book, this perhaps is the most important. Chapter, and inshallah we will try to spend as much time trying to explain it as possible. The Shaykh says, قواعد وأصول في منهج التلقي والاستدلال, guidelines and principles employed in deriving the creed. So the Shaykh, he is telling us that we need guidelines, we need principles that we are going to use to derive the creed. So there are two things here. Firstly, what are the sources for our Aqidah as Muslims? And number two, how do I use those sources to derive my Aqidah and come to a conclusion? So the Shaykh is going to mention a few of them, inshallah. We'll give a few examples of each, and we will try, inshallah, to make sure that if no other chapter of this book is explained in great detail, that this chapter, inshallah, is given the most attention, because, like I said, it is the most important. The first, the Shaykh says, مصدر العقيدة هو كتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم الصحيحة وإجماع السلف الصالح. The sources for the creed, Aqidah, are the Book of Allah, the authentic Sunnah of the Prophet of his Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the consensus of the pious predecessors. So firstly, the Book of Allah, the Kitabullah, this book which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed as a guidance to mankind. And then he says the authentic Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, I'd like you to place a line under the word authentic, because that is the only Sunnah which is acceptable in the matters of Aqidah. And as long as the Hadith is authentic, it has been certified as being authentic by the specialist in the field, the Muhaddithun, then that is to be used in matters of Aqidah. And we'll talk about another matter, inshallah, right after this. And the consensus, the ijma' of the pious predecessors, whatever they agreed upon. So let's, inshallah, give an example for each. The sources for the creed, Aqidah, are the Book of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, كُلُّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقَنَاهُ بِقَدْرٍ. Every single thing we have created by a qadr, with a decree. So, from that verse we derive the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has preordained everything in this world. That everything that has taken place and that will take place was done so by the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The authentic Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the authentic Hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that you will see your Lord like you see this full moon. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying that we will see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Hadith is authentic, therefore we use it as proof for the matter of ru'ya, the matter of seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the year after. He then says the consensus of the pious predecessors. An example of this would be, as Awza'i says, he says, كُنَّا وَالتَّابِعُونَ مُتَوَفِّرِينَ, that we and the tabi'een used to be, we were many, and we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was above His arsh, was above His creation, and he says that that was what they believed at the particular time. So that was the ijma' of the salaf, the tabi'een. That also means that the sahaba before them all believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was above His throne, above His creation.